too hot now. I radiate, don't need a rear view, they behind me. Cause my future's so bright in my blind. Hold up, why I gotta shine so bright, don't need a reason. Escorting my haters out, they wish you sleep. Can't be nobody else, I'ma be myself. So they gon' have to watch me treat myself. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good.
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and boy, have we got a lot of viewer submissions to catch up on. I'm taking them two at a time, because I'm terrible with time management. And I want to do them justice, because these were really interesting things to look into. And you know it'll be fun, because I tried to pre-record some of them, and I just failed. I wanted to, there's something about having the pressure of you guys listening to me live that it changes. It changes the outcome of the product. It's part of the chemistry of the show. And so it's a rare thing that I do a pre-recorded segment. But these were interesting. We have a ton to talk about. I want to jump into it, but not without saying, hi, Groove Dragon, good to see you. Rex Trek, hello. Seriously, I'm jamming. My man, we have a debate tomorrow, followed by Trump's appearance in court. I'm going to take one last evening to truly unwind before a marathon session. Groove Dragon, Groove confirmed. I love it. Wicked Foxy Dragon. No. Jake? Bad with time management? Doesn't sound like him at all. Domenico, hi. Good to see you. I like Jake's ensemble tonight. Yeah. Oh, Groove Dragon, live and direct. Much respect. I love it. I'm gonna borrow that phrase, but with credit given. I like that a lot. Let's talk about the news. There's too much. I've learned this from the audience. Too much Schadenfreude not to enjoy. Ooh, it's a good start to the evening. Brace yourselves, because this may shock people of mild sensibilities. But the former president of the United States may have lied. Be still, my beating heart. It turns out that one of his employees, after deciding he's not going to go with a Trump attorney, changed his story. And if I'm not mistaken, he's now using a government-appointed attorney. I'm not sure if I heard that right on the first pass through, because I was squealing like a 10-year-old girl who had been gifted a pony for her birthday when I heard this news.
We have breaking news. There is a bombshell in the classified documents case to tell you about. That is thanks to a new court filing from special counsel Jack Smith. Prosecutors revealing for the very first time a...
Before we enjoy it, let's make sure we can all enjoy it equally here. With a little piece of honesty, I was squealing like a 36-year-old man would squeal if given a pony for his birthday. Ponies are lovely.
Potential turning point in their investigation. It led to last month's superseding indictment. telling Judge Cannon that last month an employee at Mar-a-Lago, he's known in the indictment as Trump Employee 4, retained a new lawyer, got new representation, and retracted false testimony from this filing. Quote, when Trump Employee 4 testified before the grand jury in the District of Columbia in March of 2023, he repeatedly denied or claimed not to recall any contacts or conversations about the security footage at Mar-a-Lago. On July 5th, 2023, Trump Employee 4 informed Chief Judge Boasberg that he no longer wished to be represented by Mr. Woodward and that going forward he wished to be represented by the first assistant federal defender. Wow. Immediately after receiving new counsel, Trump Employee 4 retracted his prior false testimony and provided information that implicated Walt Nauta, Mr. De Oliveira, and Trump in efforts to delete security camera footage as set forth in the superseding indictment. Wow. So.
Yeah. I'm glad we froze it there. The fella on the right there, I imagine that is the face Trump's lawyers made when they heard this news. Oh my God, we're that's it. That's the game. No, this is just at first blush here. That this is exactly what we were expecting to happen bit by bit. I'm delighted to hear it already happened a month ago. But when we heard news that Trump was running out of money and making some wild decisions based upon money, this was, of course, soon to follow. He doesn't have real loyalty from anyone, and he's not been. I mean, let me put it like this: you and I could build something, and I like y'all. But if you asked me to do something, I wouldn't be doing it because I like you. I'd be doing it because we have the same set of principles, more or less. We're in the same ballpark. We want, broadly, as far as I know, the same things. Trump doesn't have that advantage. Trump's trying, from what I can tell, he's trying to get a bunch of people to help him get away with a crime. And so as soon as he runs out of carrot, he's not the one holding the stick. That's the government. The stick is prison. So if Trump loses the ability to essentially bribe his way into controlling these people, yeah, I mean, his defense is based on lies, and those lies are going to come undone. People are going to say, well, it was a good run, but it's over now, and I'm not going to prison for nothing.
Andrew Weissman, help us make sense of the timeline here. I mean, I was on the air with you when the superseding indictment came out, and I'm always gobsmacked at the crimes that Trump gets people to commit on his behalf. It appears that this employee at Mar-a-Lago has changed his testimony to tell the truth, and I wonder how that impacts his status as well as Trump's.
Sure. So this is how you get cooperating witnesses. This looks to me like you have the Mar-a-Lago IT guy went and either gave an interview or gave grand jury testimony that the government could prove was false. And it is also an indictment in a colloquial sense of the legal system when you have so-called House counsel. Cassidy Hutchinson gave everybody a crash course on what happens in this kind of political case. I saw it all the time in Enron. I saw it all the time in mob cases, having handled those at the beginning of my career, where House counsel is not looking out for the interests of the person who they represent.
Another point. I might do stuff just because I like it. I don't like move a couch. I'm just talking prison time, y'all. But don't you think it's funny that these huge corporations and mafia organizations, or just let's not racialize or nationalize it, the frickin' organized crime rings, are the ones that have House counsel. I have not heard of a place that has House counsel that I'm entirely okay with. And I say this having come from multiple, I can't even say one, multiple companies that have such a thing. Literally, in the same building, lawyer. There's an office down the way from yours where you go to ask legal questions, and I never got there, but I just presume they also represent you in court. It just shouldn't be. There's an inherent conflict of interest, and if a company's in trouble, no, not a company. If an organization is in trouble, and it requires any sort of coercion to stay out of trouble, the company's in the wrong, the organization's in the wrong. And we should at least take note of the fact that House counsel is a through line with a lot of the shadiest elements of our society.
And so here, the person wisely got separate counsel. We saw the exact same thing with Cassidy Hutchinson, where she gave testimony about what her prior counsel, paid for by folks aligned with Donald Trump, had advised her to do, which was, according to her, obstruct justice. Here, with independent counsel, you have somebody who has flipped and is clearly an insider, saying what it is that the three charged defendants, that is Mr. Trump, Mr. Nauta, and Mr. De Oliveira, did in connection with the obstruction scheme. It's not surprising that you would have more than those three people. In fact, I suspect there are quite a few more, and this is how you make a case. You do that, but it is really important that people have independent counsel.
And Andrew Weissman, the fact that he is telling the truth with what sounds like a public defender, does that change how the government approaches Mr. Nauta, who I believe the government believed was lying to it from the beginning?
Well, Mr. Nauta was, by all accounts, was given the exact same choice. I mean, he is where he is because he decided not to cooperate. He made choices about his own conduct, and he is being charged for that. It remains, of course, the government's burden to prove that. But he chose a very different path, which is why he is a defendant in that case. The same thing is reported to be the case with Mr. De Oliveira. I can't imagine that Jack Smith wouldn't have been interested in their truthful testimony as witnesses, and may have been even willing to immunize them or have a non-prosecution.
Just one. Often do you hear Fox News guests saying things like, well, listen, it remains the government's burden to prove X, Y, or Z, as opposed to just shooting off at the hip infinitely. Not very often. However, that being said, I follow the golden rule with Fox News, which is they've said things that make the rest of their opinions pretty much irrelevant. So I don't watch them often. I don't watch them to get informed, because I have to do more work to figure out what they lied about than I would simply watching somebody else to get informed. But if you watch Fox occasionally, and they do have moments like this, let me know. I'd like to see where we can start cracking into the things they at least claim to believe in. Just a thought.
Agreement. In other words, say, if you just tell us what happened and what you did, we won't charge you with it, but you have to be 100% candid. And this goes on all the time. I suspect, we know about this person in Mar-a-Lago, that there are other people in a similar situation that we will learn about as this case goes forward.
My God. That was a delight. I really really going to make us listen to that whole jam? My apologies. So, yeah, we have a major witness flipping. I think we talked about this guy a little bit. My understanding is it's the person who would have been a direct witness to an attempt to destroy evidence. And it's frankly not crucial. I realize that they came in pretty strong there, but it's not crucial. There is no one part of this case, at least according to my understanding. There's no one part to the documents case that is absolutely crucial, because Trump pretty blatantly disrespected the American people and the laws the rest of us have to live under. And he did it for an extended period of time, and to our shame, he was given chance after chance to do it again and again. And it sucks that happened. He shouldn't have been allowed that many chances. We shouldn't be able to build such a case against him. I mean, we the people, being represented in the form of the prosecutors, shouldn't have been able to build such a case against him, because he shouldn't have had the opportunities to do the things he did. But he did. And there is reams of evidence, literally, if you were to print it out, taller than some of our more impressive monuments. The evidence is. So, not any one person is not going to make or break this case, but it is damn good to hear that the House counsel is no longer going to be affecting one of the witnesses, and that, yep, sure enough, they're changing their tune. Let's see what y'all have to say about it. The Anti-Corporatists, in my opinion, House counsel should, and they probably, House counsel, let's see, they probably are, honestly, being required to tell you to get your own counsel, you know? Yeah, House counsel should and probably are required to tell you to get your own counsel. Yeah, I think so. I think we can ban the concept of House counsel in a lot of ways. And one of them is that approach you're taking right there. Take ethics that lawyers are supposed to adhere to, such as advising people that are potential clients that they can't represent them because their interests may, one of their other clients' interests may conflict with theirs. And simply say, look, if you're found to have done this, you lose your license to practice law. Look at how hard it is to remove an attorney's license. We need to change that real quick. I want standards for attorneys again. Once upon a time, my pappy sold his sports car because he couldn't help but speed in the thing, and he got a bunch of tickets over the course of a summer. And the reason why is because lawyers who take the things they say seriously, well, hell, they mean them. And one of the things you can't do as a lawyer is break the law. Obviously, you're supposed to represent it. You can't be, you yourself can't be a shady son of a gun. That includes things like violating the posted speeds. And so, in one of the heartbreaking acts that I admire most, that I have borne witness to in this world, my old pop sold his beloved car because it was too much of a temptation. Can you imagine if $1 million attorneys were living that way, were making those kinds of decisions? Can you imagine if we actually took these oaths they are supposed to swear or affirm seriously? And if you did something like act as house counsel for someone, when that was clearly against their interest, you should just lose your license. That's it. You can't be a lawyer anymore. And poof, I have a feeling that would go away as a crutch these folks use. At least the corporations would have a hell of a lot of a harder time doing it. And if they didn't, they would have what Trump's going through now. You lose out on skilled lawyers because they understand that they're potentially giving up an extraordinarily successful career in law by doing the things their client has asked them to do. Whereas Trump's current attorneys, well, hell, this is for sure the best they're ever going to do. Groove Dragon, shady son of a gun, best non-swear ever. Thank you. Oh man, I'm not entirely sure if that one was even mine. Oh, Rex Trek, and he's still missing documents. Exhales hit. Yeah, I honestly, that does seem like the only reasonable reaction to some of this news. Groove Dragon, orange is the new orange? Yeah. Yep, I'm glad we've settled that once and for all. We all enjoyed the Netflix series, but it's time to go back to the way things ought to be. Orange is indeed the new orange. Y'all. This one's an interesting one. You're going to have to give me a minute. It's not a short video. It's 16 minutes. We'll skip the ad part. But it's a good video. And I thank the Anti-Corporatist for recommending this some time ago. But it's a nuanced discussion, and by God, if we're gonna call ourselves internet lefties, what are we if not people who enjoy nuanced discussions about complicated things? This is that, and I will record it because we live in capitalist hell, and I must attempt to monetize every breath I take. So here we go. Thanks to the Anti-Corporatist for suggesting this one. The concept is this. We have too much carbon. It's causing global warming. Too much carbon in the atmosphere, yada yada, causing global warming. How are we actually going to solve the problem? Yes, I understand. There's all sorts of legislative things to do. But when it comes down to actually fixing things, which is the phase we are in now, where we can't just stop harming, but now we must take steps to actively fix. The question is, how do we do it? I don't necessarily agree with what we're about to watch, but I'll tell you this, I agree with the spirit behind it. We should be taking big swings, and we should be investing in the process of figuring out what we're going to do. Here is, let me make sure I'm reading this channel correctly. Here is 2-Bit Da Vinci, as recommended by the Anti-Corporatist, telling the story of somebody who tried.
Pouring rust into the oceans as fertilizer could be the answer to reaching carbon neutrality on a global scale. That's right. I know that sounds crazy, but there is a plan to suck out excess carbon from the atmosphere by growing phytoplankton using rust as a fertilizer. Now, this idea has been around for as long as 30 years, but it has always been marred in controversy with the danger of even worse carbon emissions from the formation of dead zones in the ocean. But could this plan actually work? And if so, would the benefits outweigh any possible unintended consequences? So there's some pretty amazing parts to this story that you're not going to want to miss. So stay tuned till the end and let's find out. I'm Ricky, and this is 2-Bit Da Vinci.
Now I have to tell you, when I first watched this in the first moments, I already had a strong thought right there. When he says, "Oh, but there's a lot of controversy," I go, I have never heard of the bad guys raising a stink about something unless it interferes with their profit. So if there's controversy, I'm assuming just based on that the people that have a problem with it have a damn good reason to have a problem with it. Bear in mind that gigantic grain of salt as we watch, as they talk about what this concept actually is. Here it is. First, just understand what is being pitched to us.
This video is brought to you by Delete Me. You see, the last idea, sinking algae as a form of carbon capture, was all about taking a reactive approach that would help manage and take advantage of massive algae blooms like the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, aka the giant seaweed blob. But some researchers and business people are now proposing to take more proactive approaches to hit on the same goals by intentionally triggering photosynthetic phytoplankton blooms. The idea is to use iron rust as fertilizer to feed phytoplankton and help it grow, absorbing carbon from the atmosphere and then sequestering it as the dead phytoplankton cells and high carbon animal exertions from the animals that eat it at the bottom of the ocean. This would have the added benefit of providing a rich source of food and nutrients for the rest of the ocean's food chain, bringing life and fishing back to where we've been depleting it by overfishing and polluting it for years. Such a simple and elegant solution, right? Well, this actually has many scientists and ecologists in an uproar, pinning this idea as a form of geoengineering, a term that seems innocuous but is kind of at the root of all evil for some people. A crazy experiment that could go horribly wrong and end up doing much more harm than good, affecting everyone on the planet. If it succeeds though, it could be the single most important carbon capture solution at global scale, one that would cost as little as $2 per ton of captured carbon, making it the cheapest option available in history. But the problem is that it would also end up triggering even worse greenhouse gas emissions than it captures and even create oxygen depleted dead zones in the wide stretches of the ocean instead of blooming life back to the water. In spite of these dangers and despite the lack of consent among climate scientists and oceanographers about this effectiveness, one American businessman called George Russ, aka the Pacific Ocean Hacker, made it his mission to fertilize.
Can you guess the two words that gave me a hell of a lot of hesitation there when he introduced George Russ? American businessman. We don't have a good track record. That's a bit like saying German prison guard. I realize you can't. What am I if not an American businessman? I recognize the glass house from which I am whipping a stone. But goddamn. We got a real bad track record. And the fact that people are saying, wow, this could be disastrous, and this guy's saying, no, I know better. It reminds me of, Ocean Gate a little bit. Doesn't it? No, I know better. I'm in the ocean where laws don't apply to me, so you can't say nothing. Here's what to look out for. How does this guy become rich doing this thing? They'll answer it. They'll answer it. The question then to follow up with, once you have that, how does this guy make a fortune doing this thing that environmentalists are begging him not to do? The question then is is he going to be more interested in making money or saving the planet? And my answer would be, if he was more interested in saving the planet, those environmentalists are people he would be working with rather than against. But let's find out. Maybe they team up.
As the ocean with rust. This solopreneur and self-proclaimed ocean pasture specialist was viciously attacked by governments.
No. That's as far as we could get. Self-proclaimed? Self-proclaimed. In other words, he's just some guy. He's just some guy. I'm going to tear into this dude even worse. Don't worry, but understand I am still supportive of ideas like this. Despite the fact that I feel the way I feel about the specifics, I think this is the right track. How about that? I think this is the sort of thing that not only should we be doing, we're going to be required to be doing. We should have the government version of this heavily sponsored. But anyway, just want to make that clear. Self-proclaimed, and also, what else is he saying there? Let's listen to this.
Solopreneur and self-proclaimed ocean pasture specialist was viciously attacked by governments and scientists the world over.
There are some things that you can do that you don't have to understand all the details of to know they're wrong. Like, I don't need to know how brain chemistry works when you're drunk, and I don't need to know how to build a car to know you shouldn't drink and drive. There are other signs you can rely on. For example, if I can't find the keyhole to my car door, I've got my sign right there. If governments and scientists are screaming at you not to do something, and you're not a scientist, don't do it.
Even Greenpeace left Japanese whalers
In fact, even if you are a scientist, wait until you have at least 50% consensus, for God's sake. It's all of our oceans for the principle of the thing alone.
alone for the first time to chase him down across the seas as if he was the devil incarnate. International law
They might not have been wrong. I still like the overall goal.
laws were passed, governments were mobilized, Greenpeace threatened to literally sink his ship, yet they couldn't stop him. He managed to do a large-scale ocean pasture restoration experiment back in 2012, and the results were staggering. We'll get back to that in a few moments, but first, let's take a look at how this whole idea started. Give me half a tanker of iron, and I'll give you the next ice age. That's the most famous quote from the late oceanographer John Martin of Moss Landing Marine Observatories in California. He said that in 1988, when he first proposed his iron hypothesis about a revolutionary new way of capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it in the seabed. The original paper was published in 1990 and presented a hypothesis that explains the link between iron supply, phytoplankton production, and the sequestration of carbon in depth, which was responsible for the low carbon dioxide levels that led to the last ice age. In fact, I don't know if you realize this, but it's actually this form of phytoplankton carbon sequestration that later turned into the fossil fuels like gasoline and oil that we're burning today, not dinosaur remains like they've been teaching us in school. It's all based on something called the ocean's biological carbon pump. Here's a simplified step-by-step explanation of how it works. Before I get into that, have you ever Googled yourself to see how much private information is public online? I have, and it's seriously shocking. And why I signed up for Delete It from Microsoft.
Here we go.
Small animals, organic, using sunlight, carbon dioxide.
Now listen, I've got things to say on the experiment he ran itself. Let's just look at what is actually happening as best we can to try to understand it, at least to hear it out. I'll tell you, I've listened to this chunk of the video about 3 times. I don't fully get it, but I will explain my stance coming out the other side regardless. Maybe you will, though, and I'll appreciate the input.
Dioxide and nutrients. They convert CO2 into organic matter through photosynthesis, the same as plants do here on land. Then small animals called zooplankton eat the phytoplankton, transferring the organic carbon stored in phytoplankton into their bodies. The zooplankton are then eaten by larger marine life, such as fish, which in turn may be consumed by even larger predators and so on, transferring carbon up the food chain. When zooplankton and other marine organisms excrete waste or die, they release carbon-rich particles. These particles, along with the remains of phytoplankton and other organic matter, snow down toward the ocean floor. The marine snow slowly sinks through the water column, moving carbon from the surface of the ocean to the deep ocean, something called carbon export. As the marine snow sinks, it's broken down by bacteria and other decomposers. Some of the carbon is released back into the water as dissolved carbon dioxide and ultimately end up back at the atmosphere. But some of it is incorporated into the bodies of deep sea organisms or buried in the sediment at the ocean floor. This traps the carbon away from the atmosphere for decades to millennia. Overall, the ocean's biological pump is one of the most important natural carbon sinks in the world.
So broad strokes, the problem is that of the things our planet's made of, one of the things is carbon, and we have too much of it in the wrong place. It's in the atmosphere. We need it elsewhere. All right, fair enough. One place we can put it, bottom of the ocean, where it's in fact it can be, according to this guy's hypothesis, part of the ecosystem. It can help rejuvenate a little bit. That's great. It's if I'm understanding that correctly, that's great. No complaints if it works, and maybe it does. I do definitely think we cannot trust this guy who stands to make a fortune if the world declares this is the thing we're all doing, to decide whether or not it works. It's those annoying scientists and governments that have to do that.
Estimated to suck up 5 to 12 gigatons of carbon from the atmosphere each and every year. To put this in perspective, according to the UN, the total global annual carbon emissions amounted to 37 gigatons per year in 2021. So the ocean sucks up a significant portion of our carbon emissions, with land-based carbon sinks, trees, sucking up even more. But there's still an obvious excess in production, which is why we're here talking about carbon capture. It's estimated that we'd still need to either capture or reduce our annual carbon emissions by at least 1 gigaton every year to reach carbon neutrality and the global climate goals of the Paris Agreement. So if we could boost biological pumps to soak up 1 extra gigaton of carbon from the air, it would be smooth sailing from here on out. Or at least that's what the ocean fertilizer advocates tell us. The question is, could we really? And also, would we want to? To answer the first question,
To put it another way, their concern. Okay, that 100 gigatons of carbon after 100 years, what happens? What happens after we consistently, instead of dumping all of our carbon into the atmosphere, we dump it all into the ocean? And we say that short term, there's going to be some benefits to this. But what happens after long term takes effect, arrives, let's say? What happens after we get to the point where instead of a microscopic film of carbon along the surface of the seabed, of these particles, whatever they are, it's that thick, and a type of crab that used to feed on things by burrowing out of its holes, it just suffocates because its habitat has been smothered. I'm making this up, but that's the sort of thing we're talking about here. What are the long-term effects, and how close to 100% sure of the long-term effects are we gonna be before we start doing this? The answer should be pretty damn close. The answer should be something like 99 point something percent sure that we know what's gonna happen before we commit to doing the thing. And the kind of forces that push us to do major things like this before we're ready, that's what got us into this problem to begin with.
we need to understand why the plan is to fertilize the ocean with rust. I mean, rust isn't your typical fertilizer, right? Does the ocean have anemia or something? The explanation is actually very simple. Phytoplankton blooms work just like a big factory in the ocean. It needs a steady supply of nutrients just like a factory needs a steady supply chain. Like all plants, the main nutrients phytoplankton need to grow are carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Scientists used to believe that the limiting factor was always phosphorus since that's the hardest element to come by in the open ocean. There's a ton of carbon and nitrogen in our atmosphere that dissolves freely in the ocean. But it turns out that phytoplankton can't use the nitrogen as it is in the air. They need a special enzyme to fix the nitrogen, and that enzyme needs iron to work. So it turns out to be iron and not phosphorus or any other nutrient, which limits phytoplankton growth in the open seas. The good thing is that you need very little iron to make phytoplankton grow, since it's only a micronutrient, making it literally dirt cheap. But how much carbon could we capture even if we did fertilize the oceans with iron? That's where the debate starts heating up. The truth is, no one really knows. Even if we boost phytoplankton and absorb more carbon from the air, that doesn't guarantee that the carbon will end up sequestered in the sea floor. In the biological pump, phytoplankton enters the food chain, so most of the carbon ends up dissolved back in the oceans as CO2 and back into the atmosphere because sea creatures, like all animals, breathe oxygen and use it to turn their food into energy, water, and CO2. So in the end, only a small fraction of the phytoplankton biomass actually makes it to the deep ocean. You know, that carbon export we were talking about a minute ago. And no one has been able to accurately measure exactly how much that is, or even if the phytoplankton blooms after iron fertilization increased that carbon export. It's all still very theoretical. But still, the worst estimates based on the extent of iron deficient waters around the globe imply that this technique may be capable, at best, of sequestering 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide per year, which is precisely what we need to reach carbon neutrality. So what's the holdup? The concept of geoengineering the ocean through iron fertilization has been met with both excitement and concern. While the potential benefits of increased phytoplankton growth and carbon sequestration are evident, there are several dangers associated with the process. Besides phytoplankton, introducing iron to the ocean can encourage the growth of harmful algal blooms, which can release neurotoxins and harm marine life, as well as negatively impact human health and coastal economies. Altering nutrient balances in the ocean can disrupt delicate marine ecosystems, potentially leading to cascading effects of various species and habitats, none of which we're fully aware of and fully understand just yet. The long-term impacts of iron fertilization.
In other words, that thing I was talking about, the made-up crab. It's not that we should not explore this specific technique. We definitely should. In fact, evidence to that coming up quick here. We should look into this. We should be sponsoring government programs to look into this, or at least explain to us why it wouldn't work. But it's promising enough that, yes, this is something we should be, as a collective, pursuing in some manner, pursuing the truth of the technique. Will it save us? Will a little bit of it help, even if we don't do a lot? Are there areas of the ocean where we could do this, as opposed to areas where we shouldn't do it, and so on and so forth? But leaving it in letting business folks lead the charge is a mistake, because they will not do it properly. And in fact, what they will instead accomplish is spoiling the idea for all of us. They'll do it wrong. They'll do it harmfully. They will not help the environment. I know that's a kick in the teeth, but it's true. They through the pursuit of fortune, they will have to, basically, when you're trying to help the environment, the benefit of your actions is the help to the environment. And if you are pursuing it entirely as a business, in fact, forget that. If you're pursuing it as a business, you have to know that you will increase your profits by cutting in to the quality of your product, the quality of the output. And in an unregulated capitalist society like we currently live in, the amount of good you will end up doing will be the smallest amount you can get away with, including even if it ends up being, instead of doing good, doing a lot of bad, because you're allowed to get away with it.
On the ocean and global climate are still not well understood either. Unintended consequences and side effects could emerge as the process is scaled up, making it difficult to predict and manage. Some scientists believe the effect could even be worse than the problem of methane-producing bacteria eating dead plankton, since methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2. One important unintended consequence and a strong reason for pushback against this type of geoengineering is that even though phytoplankton produces oxygen through photosynthesis, phytoplankton blooms can actually produce oxygen-depleted dead zones in the ocean when they're eaten by oxygen-hungry zooplankton or other aquatic life forms. Some studies, such as the ones conducted by researchers at MIT, suggest that iron fertilization may not have a significant overall effect on carbon export, making it an ineffective method for carbon capture. Finally, there are many reasons why the real cost of carbon sequestration using carbon fertilization may be much higher than originally thought. Between offsets from unintended methane and nitrous oxide production to lower than expected carbon export, the actual cost could be as high as $457 per ton of CO2, putting it among the most expensive solutions on the market today. As you can see, the ocean is a complex system, and there's literally no way to know for certain what something like a global-scale iron fertilization project would do to the world. But it seems some people just don't care about risks and uncertainty, and that's the case with Russ George, an American businessman who dedicated his life to helping rid the world of excess carbon emissions, first by planting trees, then by fertilizing the ocean with rust, all while making some money on the side.
Wait a minute. All right, finish that sentence. Let me go ahead.
First by planting trees, then by fertilizing the ocean with rust, all while making some money on the side while selling carbon credits. You gotta let the enterprising businessman. He
dedicated his life? No, he did not. At most, he's dedicated his business to saving the environment, quote unquote. But really, he's just in the environment saving business. That's not the same as saving the environment. It's certainly not the same as dedicating your life to saving the environment. All while making some money on the side. All while making some money on the side by selling carbon credits. Here are the problems with carbon credits, and I'd like you to keep them in mind as we hear the last bit. We have two problems. Number one, we're past the point of neutrality being enough. That's gone. And we need to understand that. It doesn't mean that neutrality is worse than doing nothing. Certainly not. But when you are selling carbon credits as your business, what you end up with, nothing. Because the company, let's say we have a company who burns coal to make their money, and they pump carbon into the atmosphere, and then they pay a company, a carbon offset company, to do trees, let's say, to capture that carbon and hold it in the form of a tree. Problems. That coal that was in the ground and would have been in the ground for our purposes basically forever. Now its carbon is being held in a tree, which may burn in a forest fire and once again release that carbon, or may yada 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 yada. You haven't really dealt with the problem. All you've accomplished is allowing that coal burning company to say, we're carbon neutral, when really all they've done is shifted their carbon around and stored it in a place that we have allowed them to say is just as good as if it was never taken out of the coal in the first place. But we know that's not true. Or at least we in almost all cases suspect that is not true. Similarly, or rather I should say in a similar vein, we don't regulate these people very well. We don't have the policing set up to make sure these people are sticking by what they say? For all we know, they could buy a carbon credit for 1 gigaton. I just want to say the word gigaton more because it's fun. All right, 1 ton. Let's just keep it simple of carbon. They purchase that. But then they use that purchase to justify 100 tons of carbon that they pump into the atmosphere. But they're simply lying. They're lying. And they know there's no one that's going to catch them. And if they do get caught, the fine they will pay is tiny in comparison to what they would have had to pay to offset the carbon. Basically, this is a way to make things boring enough that we don't pay very close attention. And so we let them get away with doing the same thing they've always been doing. Before, they could just lie to us and say that, no, it's not true. We're not hurting the environment. Now they're saying, okay, we were hurting the environment, but now we're not hurting the environment. See, we paid a very small amount of money for our purposes. We've made a new billionaire. We all got together and we made a new billionaire for you. There you go. See? It's all better now. Now, I realize your backyard is actually on fire, but the good news is we might plant a tree. This guy is setting up a carbon offset business with let me say this, barely tested technology, and he's the one that tested it. So it's in his interest to say, oh, it's going to save us all. It's going to save us all.
He's also probably the reason why this idea was satanized from the start. You see, Russ decided to make Martin's iron hypothesis and turn it into a cheap carbon credit goldmine. His idea was to sell companies carbon credits for fertilizing the ocean with rust, assuring them that the technique would successfully capture carbon while boosting the ocean's food chain and bringing about more fish to the ocean. But the problem is that this is an unproven technology, and a dangerous one at that. When Greenpeace caught on that the guy who sold the Vatican an imaginary forest was about to dump thousands of tons of rust in the Galapagos, one of the most important natural reserves in the world, they pointed all their guns at George Russ and to whoever they thought would be pursuing the idea. They even
God damn, that's interesting. I'd love to go into the story about the selling of the imaginary forest to the Vatican. That's hilarious. And by the way, another carbon offset scam, it sounds like. But let me jump through this real world test. Here it is in a nutshell. Greenpeace tried to stop him. He didn't stop. He did successfully dump a load of iron into the ocean. And the result was that he reported, I should say, that this guy reported no measurable harm. And the next year, the year that followed, was the second best salmon harvest that area had ever seen. Neat. Why am I skipping past that? Because we're at a half hour already. And there's almost no way to talk about it quickly. But it doesn't change anything that we went over. Let's talk about what you can do. So in short, in response to the Anti-Corporatist asking, what do you think of this video? I think it is great that a capitalist pig has taken an interest in this type of technology. I think he might be onto something. And I think it's a shame that this fella has become a mascot for it, because he's shady as hell. I would like to see our governments, and now when I say our, I mean the whole world. I want to see us all experimenting with this and things like it. You don't have to, you can do this in a lab. You don't have to take the kinds of risks this guy was taking. As a matter of fact, I would argue you don't have a right to take the kind of risks this guy was taking. Imagine if we tried to make the atom bomb, the Manhattan Project, a capitalist endeavor. And you have an idea of the kind of potential destruction we're talking about here. These are ecosystems where if they go down, that's the game. For a lot of human communities. But ultimately, I mean, it could start a chain reaction, the consequences of which are, I mean, they're more dire than I'm able to express properly. But so's doing nothing. So here we are. So how then? How do we proceed? It doesn't help to say, well, that's not the right answer, but also that's not the right answer. Well, we have to change the way we find the answer. Number one, we don't seem to have an issue, really, with convincing people that the problem's here. Why? Because it's tearing down houses. And all the folks that refuse to see Jesus when it comes to this, they gonna meet the Lord by their own hands. Because the global warming is here, and it's causing increasingly horrible problems. So, okay. What we need to do is eliminate the idea of carbon buyback programs, the carbon offset purchases. If you are in a country that does this, tell whoever represents you, you don't want that. You cannot pass off this responsibility. You cannot, number one, let the people who are poisoning us pretend like they are not poisoning us, because they are. We can't, and we certainly can't have a program like this when we refuse to regulate these folks at all, when we refuse to police these folks at all, when we trust their word. Their word is worth nothing. That's been demonstrated over and over again. In fact, they're liars. If you're a billionaire, you lie. It's that simple. If you're the CEO of a company, you lie. It is truly that simple. There's probably a better way to arrange society so that the leaders of industry don't lie dangerously and constantly, but I don't know what that is, and I'm not going to waste your time trying to figure it out here. I'm just saying that we do not have a society set up in any country on this earth, in this era, where a carbon offset program is going to do good as opposed to harm. So what you can do, if you are interested in ideas like this, becoming the responsibility of the government or universities or et cetera, things that we need, not being stolen and ruined by capitalists. Tell your government, tell your representatives, so let me try this again, tell your government through your representatives that you do not want carbon offset programs to exist in your neck of the woods. Ooh, Anti-Corporatist, I'm delighted you're here. The messages are flying by. I'm trying to catch up. Man, I'm in line for a fuel at a truck stop. Terrifying. Ooh. And now he's got to get fuel. Fair enough. Well, I did want to say, man, I know I went hard on that guy. That, like, specifically the guy doing the plan. But that really does a poor job of expressing how much hope the fact that this guy saw an angle there gives me. I mean, I definitely think that, what is it, George Russ? George Russ is the wrong person to do this because he's demonstrated what his goal is to try to bleed the ocean, basically. He's trying to get money. All right. But it's a great idea. It's a really cool idea. It's certainly one that doesn't immediately get undone when we have a forest fire. It's the kind of thinking that will be required going forward, and I hope that we pursue this seriously. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing that with me. Tinkerbell, it should be in every business's interest to take care of the environment. They don't have customers if the world burns up. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, they don't care about the future. They only care about making money now. They won't be here when it's time to face the consequences. True. True. Wireless Mike, and the waters turn to blood. Yes, indeed. I just wish our blood wasn't green. To the businesses having it be their responsibility and the here and now. Both of you are correct. So how do we do that? How do we dance along that line? Well, we rely on the government to punish businesses, genuinely punish businesses that harm the environment. We make it too expensive to harm the environment. Right now, you can do things that in 50 years will drop jaws when they hear about. You can just dump chemicals into the water. You can get rid of your trash in atrocious ways. You can get all of the energy to run an office building 100% from sources that we know are killing us. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to have to worry about if my home has solar panels or what or where. I just want to buy my energy. Yeah, it shouldn't be your problem to worry about. It's Consumers Energy's problem. It's the Texas whatever's problem. It's not your problem. It's theirs. That's the whole point of purchasing a service like this. You're not supposed to have to think about it. That's for them to do. They absolutely can run a cleaner operation than they do, but they are not made to, and that's the difference. That's the well-regulated part of well-regulated capitalism that we've been missing. So we need to heavily increase regulations. We need to make fines that don't just that are not just so small, so insignificant that they're considered a minor cost of doing business. No. If you are caught doing one of the things that is killing people, you should, well, first of all, if it directly kills somebody, for example, if the folks in East Palestine start coming down with the same sickness, that shouldn't be a civil suit. That should be prison time. Because those folks knew that they were running a slapshot operation, and they chose to do it anyway. Now they got to pay the consequences. But in addition, we should have the kinds of consequences where your whole business is taken out of your hands. Guess what? Your power company, for example, that we just found said it was buying, let's go to that earlier made-up example. Your business, we just found for the last decade, said that it was offsetting 100% of its carbon, but really it was only offsetting 10% of its carbon. So what we're going to do now is take your business. Now it belongs to the government. Now it's the people's business. They're going to run it instead of you because you did a crime when you lied to us. And the punishment is, number one, you cannot run this business anymore. This is no longer yours. This is, at best, this is evidence in the crime that you did. Number two, you are banned for life from participating in this industry. That's that. Those are the kinds of consequences we should have with these motherfuckers. And if it sounds harsh, it is harsh, but it's commensurate with the amount of harm they are doing to all of us, all of our children, all of our grandchildren, and the earth ever after. These are amongst the worst bastards humanity has ever summoned. Shade Dragon, hello. Good to see you. Right-wing retcon says, I didn't know that it was a pesticide plant. Let me jump up. Oh, you guys are having an interesting conversation. All right, John Doe, at a certain point, fines should be a percentage of corporations' revenue or profits. Yeah, I think, why not 100%? Why not 100% ever after? As in, we nationalize your business. That's the penalty. In my opinion, there should be an equivalent of life in prison, but for a corporation. If we're going to treat them like people, let's do it. Say, okay, you work for the government for the rest of your days. Right now, we say a person can go to prison for life, and a prisoner can be made to do work. That's what you've earned. Did you kill somebody with your business? Life. Life. That's the sentence, business. You belong to the government now. We've nationalized it. And let the rest of yous, who are now suffering against an incredibly well-run, non-profit-focused government industry, let the rest of you sweat keeping up. And let's see what the people like more. I think if we are morally in the right, we'll win eventually with basically every strategy that we try. And I would like to begin some strategies that have a faster timeline. Ooh, Looney Tunes 9000. Jake, I see you're going on the letter hack next month. Yeah, I'm trying real hard not to think about it. September 4th, I believe, is the day. And between now and then, no matter what else I'm doing, a little bit, I'm going to be thinking of curse words I'm not allowed to say. Oof. Let's go to the next segment. I'm nervous already, but I'm looking forward to it. It is going to be a blast. That looks like a fun show, and I'm excited. But I'm like roller coaster excited, you know? Like I want to go on it. I'm in the line, but I know it's going to scare me too. Ooh. Haven't felt like this since wrestling days. Hey, you know who we haven't talked about in a while is Joe Manchin. If you're not familiar, Joe Manchin. Let me go to the Urban Dictionary here. Joe Manchin is the taste you get in the back of your throat when you drank heavily last night and haven't brushed your teeth yet. He's also the senator from West Virginia who has been the bane of a lot of progressive plans. I want to thank Wireless Mike for the suggestion because even though Manchin hasn't officially come out and said it yet, he's considering leaving the party that nobody knows how he got an invitation to. This is an article in The Guardian breaking down what's going on. Let's have a gander. Joe Manchin expected to skip Biden event as he weighs leaving Democrats. The West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin is expected to skip a prominent White House celebration of one of Joe Biden's signature legislative achievements, NBC reported, as he considers leaving his party. It's not his party. Let's be crystal clear on that. It is a party that he somehow +1'd his way to, and I don't know where his date is, but he's standing alone and stinking up the joint. Next week, the Biden administration will celebrate the first anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, a healthcare, climate, and tax reform package Joe Biden hailed on signing as the biggest step forward on climate ever. which, let's point out, was severely hampered by that miserable "see you next Tuesday" up there. Not that one, the one in the still picture. With this law, the American people won and the special interests lost, Biden said. Manchin is one of the special interests. Just so you know, Manchin, 75, helped write and name the law and attended the signing ceremony as a disgrace to all of us. But Biden's actions on climate are one issue now pushing the fossil fuels-aligned senator towards the exit door, and he will reportedly skip the anniversary event. Remember, when they say he helped write it, he wasn't sitting around thinking, but how can we get more carbon secured at a cheaper price for the American taxpayer? No! He was the guy going in there saying, how can we get away with fucking over my constituents and everybody else's constituents and everybody else living on planet Earth and literally everyone born today because they will suffer tomorrow? How can I fuck over more of them? Well, I'll use the leverage I have as one of the Democrats tilting the odds in favor of the Democrats. That's necessary to get this voted through. I'll use that to make this bill worse, and I will have the gall to stand up there and sign it like I was of help, as opposed to being an absolute pillock of an obstacle. On Friday, NBC said the White House was trying to keep Manchin engaged. Why? Let him go. In fact, ask him to leave. The senator recently dined with a top Biden aide, NBC said, as the White House tried to ensure the president is not caught off guard when Manchin publicly breaks with him. Toss his stuff out on the lawn. Honey, it's over. I don't know why we let him shack up with us. Put his in boxes if you're polite, but don't keep it in the house. Lawn, sidewalk. I say pitch it out the window, but if you're decent enough that you want to walk it downstairs, fine, do that. But Christ's sake, get him out of there. Manchin helped us find a way to thread the needle and get things done on the IRA, a White House source was quoted as saying. No, he didn't. He helped us thread the needle. He made the needle hole smaller. That's all he did. But he also said he would continue to fight the Biden administration's unrelenting efforts to manipulate the law to push their radical climate agenda at the expense of both our energy and fiscal security. Listen to the words he said. Fiscal security. Money. That's what he's talking about. But guess what? It costs us money to go to the hospital when we have a heat stroke. It costs us money to repair the things that break because they were built for different climates than we are living in. You silly bastard. It costs us a ton of money. It costs us our fiscal security to keep Manchin in a mansion. Cost us energy and fiscal security. Our energy security, by the way, is in dire straits because we are still reliant on an energy source that we have been using for more than a century, and the whole world has, and we knew it was finite. We knew it would run out eventually. Do you wonder why we buy our oil from other countries when we have a load of it here? Why would we buy any of it when we have Alaska that's more oily than me when I was 14? Why? Because there's a finite amount, and if we ever go to war with somebody, we'd rather go to war with somebody whose oil we've been using and run our killing machines on our stockpile of oil that we have. That's why. But we're tapping in to our own strategic stockpile, aren't we? So what happens when we run out? What happens when we start running out in those countries we've all agreed that we're going to bleed dry? Genuine energy security problems. You know what would help? If in the original version of the Inflation Reduction Act, if we'd invested about 5 times as much into renewable energy. You know, the sun that's causing us all this hell right now? Yeah, we could convert that into energy. and solve two problems at once. But Joe Manchin is the reason we don't. On Thursday, Manchin told West Virginia radio he was thinking seriously about ceasing to identify as a Democrat. And I'm going to stop it there, because now I want to talk about what you can do. I don't need to hear another goddamn word from this jackass. Let me make this decision easy for him. Don't think about leaving the party. Get the fuck out. Get out. We talk, I hear all the time about how we need this kind of person in the Democratic Party. Well, how are you going to win over those red states? Can you imagine how bad things would have been if Joe Manchin wasn't there and Kyrsten Sinema, whatever the hell, Sinema wasn't there? Let me come at you with this. By having one Joe Manchin in the party, stinking up the joint and making us indistinguishable from the Republicans in terms of what policies we're actually pushing, watering down everything we're trying to do. By having one of him in the party sucking up our donations and muddying the name of this party. How many senators did we lose? How many elections did we lose? Because the reputation of Democrats is as wishy-washy weaklings that don't actually believe in anything and will say anything to get your vote. Here's what I recommend we do. And let me correct that. It's not me. Here's what Wireless Mike recommended we do. Let me read a little bit of what he said. It would seem that the Overton window is, and has been, on the move. As a result, disingenuous Democratic elected officials feel pressure to jump ship and leave the party that is becoming harder for them to manipulate, at least without pushback. And yet another imposter is mulling over leaving the party. Again, this is Wireless Mike. I literally can't put it better. That's why I'm reading what you said. And this a-hole is thinking about running as an independent for effing president. And no surprise, he's thinking of joining the No Labels Party with a focus on getting the centrist Republican vote. The level of narcissism is staggering. And it's not at all surprising that he won't be attending the anniversary of Biden's climate action bill. He's obviously never cared about the climate. In the long run, it may not even be necessary to weed out the corporate Dems after all. God, I hope so. How amazing, side note, how amazing would that be if this party split does happen, but we get to keep the name Democrat? I would be a fan of that. Let's let them keep the color blue so that we can line up with the rest of the world on our color scheme. But yes, they don't seem to feel as welcome as they once did, and they're looking to get out before they get voted out. Absolutely. This just proves that the current independents seek to do nothing more than to pull votes away from the Democratic candidates in all races. They don't even care if they lose, as long as they can prevent even a remotely progressive candidate from winning. Truth, Wireless Mike. Yes, sir. We can't let this happen. If Manchin or the like wishes to go, so be it. We just have to make sure to elect a real Democrat in his/their place. West Virginia and Arizona are going to be very important states to this end, and neither is going to be easy to win. You are correct, sir. Neither will be easy. Nonetheless, your assessment, in my opinion, is dead on. I would recommend you write the West Virginia Democratic I recommend you write the West Virginia Democratic Party and the Arizona Democratic Party. Contact them and tell them, do not waste my time with a right-winger in a human being's clothing. Here's an example. Senator Manchin does not appear long for the party, so I thought this would be a good time to inform you, the West Virginia Democratic Party, that the voters and donors you rely on have raised their expectations. If you want their continued support, much less the increased support of Democratic voters, then do not allow another right-wing disgrace like Manchin to befoul our reputation again. It does not help us to have a Democrat in West Virginia if we lose 10 others around the country because the party is indistinguishable from the Republicans. If you allow another right-leaning politician to run in the Democratic Party, then you will see a drop-off in support that you cannot afford. That is how it is, and now you know. As long as you mean what you say, you can speak frankly to these people. The contact page for the Arizona Democratic Party and the West Virginia Democratic Party is in the description. Let them know how you feel. And even if Manchin chickens out and decides he's going to try to stay with the Democrats, fire a shot across the bow. Let him know that we would prefer his ass not stick around any longer. Let's see what y'all have to say. Groove Dragon. I've seen some Waldorf Nation videos. A hot take on some situation at Shade Dragon. He has a new background / set and is very professional. He upgraded his wardrobe too. Okay. I've been a fan of Waldorf Nation for a long time. I love Jeff Waldorf. He's a Michigan lad. Waldorf, I should say. He's a Michigan lad. And that makes me so proud. I have avoided contacting him because I'm a socially awkward person. I don't want to do that to him. But I'm a big fan of his. And I'm delighted that you are too. Diana Dean, Manchin already owns a mine. He will never vote against his own self-interest. Agreed. Kick his ass out of the party. We have no use for him. Bob Treesh says, hey, Jake, there were 2 major shifts in society. At one time, video killed the radio star, and now internet has killed common sense. Here's the thing, though. I genuinely think the internet is helping us right now because so much of the ugliness that we're experiencing, it was here. It was just polite and politeness can be dangerous. It lets us hide a lot of wounds that are better dealt with. John Doe, try to reach out more. I would love to see you on Leftist Mafia. Ooh. All right, brother. I'll do it. Understand I'm doing it for you. I am so used to watching what we used to call the talent on screen that I'm still not used to interacting with people in such a forum. I feel like I can either answer the questions or be charming, but not both. Oh well, I will do it though. You've said it, and y'all, this doesn't exist without you, so it's getting done. Can't hegemony, right-wing retcon says, can't hegemony be characterized as common sense? Well, let me look up what hegemony means. Leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. Germany was united under Prussian hegemony after 1871. I suppose so. Yeah, maybe. It would depend on. I guess it then depends on your definition of common sense. If you mean it like, it's sort of like mean, median, or average. If you mean like, if you were to take the largest existing social group and ask them what is normal, then okay, yeah, it's common sense. But if you were to say, what would a person from anywhere in the world, what conclusion would they arrive at? That's a very different thing. Shade Dragon, no, that's called bullying. Yeah, I mean that's essentially, I think what I'm getting at here. There's I think an important difference between those words, and it comes down to power. Where does it come from? Does it come from the self-imposed cultural isolation of a group, or does it come from a more natural place? Mars Falcon, it could, but since sense is now so rare, it's possible the synonym is rendered moot. Yeah, there you go. Fair point. Wicked Foxy Dragon with the drop. Common sense is no longer common, so it is uncommon sense. Check out on Facebook for that. Looney Tunes 9000. Damn straight, Jake. Well, thank you. The Anti-Corporatist. By the way, earlier today in the members chat area for the Young Turks, it's a separate stream. Actually, there were a bunch of new chefs at a right-wing IMO. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Whoa. Hey, gang, I realize it's a 2 for Tuesday, but it's also becoming nearly too late to do another stream in the day. F it. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying hanging out with you. You may get a late night drop. We'll see. But I do want to drop something that Franny P had in here. It was too much fun. I enjoyed it too much not to share it. So we gone. We are doing something these days to sort of end the show on a better note, and it's called the unwind. It's we just wrap up with a fun little thing, you know. And this suggestion was from Franny P, and it pretty much made my afternoon. The fella's name is Randy Rainbow of Donald Trump, following the most recent set of shenanigans Trump got up to.
Well, we're back again, and joining us now on his way to surrender at Georgia's luxurious Fulton County Prison, GOP frontrunner Donald Jessica Trump. Or do you prefer Rico racketeering? Let's cut the shit. You've just been indicted a 4th time, bringing the total number of felony charges.
Okay, I'm not going to do commentary this whole thing. I want to just watch it with you. But, one thing I love about Randy Rainbow, and Looney Tunes 9000 may appreciate this. I love his Bugs Bunny-esque costume changes with the ridiculous glasses out of nowhere. Oh, my God. Big fan. All right, have at it, Hoss.
Against you, too. 91. Just 9 more and you get a free mugshot.
It's called election interference because I'm leading everybody by a lot in the polls, for every Republican, frankly, and every Democrat, including Biden, by a lot.
You know, I gotta hand it to you, Mr. Former Fake, 1-term, twice impeached, currently 4-time criminally indicted, not my president girl. When people call me names or, threaten to lock me up for 70 years for plotting to overthrow democracy, I'm in bed for a good week. But you just keep throwing parties for yourself.
Last night I had a rally with tens of thousands of people.
Good for you. Forget those trolls. You've got a country to destroy. Your delusional narcissism is inspiring.
Don't do it.
In fact, it reminds me of a song I once knew.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't tell him he's a dirty lying bragger. Life's Big Macs and the sun's a ball of MAGA. Don't anybody dare rain on his parade.
I don't have a lot of time.
Don't call him when new charges have arisen. Don't tell him he's about to rot in prison. Don't even just a hair rain on his parade. His whole campaign went right off the rails.
Perfect phone call.
Still each arraignment just makes his day, girl. So don't you try to spoil it. Hey, girl, those boxes in your toilet. But whether he defies a fair election or tries to organize an insurrection, this simply awful, slimy asshole of a guy. He won't be bested when he's arrested. He just bamboozles and bluffs. Ooh, ain't he nutty? He can run, but he can't win a race in handcuffs. No time for DOJ to dilly-dally. Tell Jack Smith, go away, he's got a rally. So take a hike and don't rain on his parade. He's gonna run and run from his criminal past. Watch how he tops every poll. Once he gets out on parole, he's headed right for the slam. One more indictment and damn! Hey, Mrs. Willis, here he is.
I'm afraid.
He's so indicted,
I didn't do it.
and he just can't fight it.
People are very angry about it.
He's about to lose in court, and he doesn't like it.
For a perfect phone call.
He's so indicted, got him burned, he just can't fight it. Crimes keep turning up, and yet they still seem to want him. They want him. He'll catch his ass off. He's so indicted, he'll break more laws. So turn the gas off and set him free. Fuzz, quit stomping on his garden because he's counting on a pardon. Melania, Goring, Janine, and Tucker, they're gonna need to spring this motherfucker, no. Henny, oh no, hunty.
Indictment.
Don't go rain on his
Perfect phone call. I'm afraid.
He's so indicted.
Hello, nauseous.
This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Links in the description for Randy Rainbow. I will scramble attempting to get another thing up. 2 for Tuesday, folks. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining.